Hello everyone, welcome to this extra special video that we have for you today. As you can see, quite obviously, we've got a brand new synthesizer to show you, and we are so fortunate to be able to preview this for you today on the day of its announcement, no less. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome the ASM Leviasynth 8 oscillator algorithmic synth. Oh, fantastic. This is, if you have been watching the weekly show, this is what's been sat behind me, covered by a blanket for many weeks. Blanket synth is now revealed. It was this all along, and boys and girls, this is it's just an absolute monster of a synth. Hence the name, I guess, Leviasynth. So what is Leviasynth? Well, we're going to try and cover that for you today. We're not going to go into huge amounts of programming detail. We're not going to show you how to create patches or anything like that. This is really just a general overview of what this synthesizer is, what it does, how it does it, and just kind of to whet your appetite, really, and give you an idea of what is going on with this instrument. So just to give you a bit of background, ASM, Glenn Darcy and Ken Pierce got in touch with me last year and said, we'd love for you to try this synth, test it out for us as part of our testing team. And, if you want to do a review, that'd be fantastic. If you don't like it, that's also fine. But can we send it to you? And of course, I was like, yes, please. That'd be fantastic. And obviously, lots of top secret paperwork had to be signed before we did that. And it arrived and instantly was just slightly confused by it. But then once I got to understand it, it's just an absolute monster of a synthesizer. So I've had the great privilege for the last few months of testing this thing and playing around with it and learning how to use it and understanding how it works. And so hopefully I can convey some of that to you right now. I will admit right now I do not know everything about this synthesizer. There's going to be stuff that I won't go into because I just don't know, and it's a little bit scary. But other than that, hopefully you'll get an idea of what's going on. No money has changed hands. There's no contract. There's no guarantee of this being a positive review or a negative review or any review. It's my review. ASM have had no input onto this. This machine is a testing unit. So there's no payments been involved whatsoever. They don't get to see this or vet this or anything like that. So it's completely 100% independent. And there you go. Just wanted to get that out of the way. So Leviasynth, here it is. This is the 61-note keyboard version. There is a desktop version as well. We'll talk about that a little later. It is an 8 oscillator algorithmic synth. So a lot of people will go, algorithmic? Well, surely that's FM. No, algorithmic synthesis can apply to all sorts of different methods. It doesn't have to be just FM. And that's why this is an FM synth and not an FM synth. So it's a hybrid synth for sure. And we'll explain, what every part component does. But trust me, this is a super powerful synthesizer. It has ASM's trademark workflow, as you can see. If you're a Hydrasynth user, you'll instantly recognize where things are, the layout, the fact that the legend on the top of the keyboard here is nice and big and clear. The knobs are nice and big and chunky, and the buttons are nice and big and illuminated. It's a brilliant interface to work with. And of course, probably the biggest difference is this thing here, the color touchscreen. Because that is completely new, and whilst it didn't appear on the Hydrasynth, it does replicate that kind of user interface paradigm that they had with the screens on the Hydrasynth. So I'll explain a bit when we get to cover that as well. You've got all the connectivity that you would expect because you've still got the CV gate stuff on the top there. You've got the MIDI and the USB on the back. And of course, you've got the polyphonic aftertouch keyboard, the ribbon controller, and the pitch bend and mod and everything else here to make this a truly expressive synthesizer. And this is even more expressive, in my opinion, because the synthesis method used here, this algorithmic synth method, lends itself to creating more expressive patches. So it really does suit the paradigm very well. little bit of background about the instrument itself. So Glenn has always wanted to make an FM synthesizer, but he didn't want to kind of go down the accepted route, the normal route. He wanted to do it differently. He wanted, more importantly, to do it better. And I think that the time that it's taken for this to come about, I think that has been achieved. So it's been a long while coming. Maybe one day we'll tell the story of how this all came to pass. We are hoping to get Glenn and Ken and Dominic all to come on the show at some point soon. So please give us a subscribe and a notification bell to make sure you get notified of that when that happens. That will be probably in a few weeks' time. Anyway, they sat down, they came up with a whole bunch of ideas. It got, quite a way down the line. They said, no, this isn't quite right. They went back and they rejigged things, kind of started from scratch again. And eventually here we have Leviasynth, and it is just an incredible machine. So we've been waiting a long time for a new one. The Hydrasynth came out about 5 or 6 years ago. It was a real big disruptor. It reintroduced polyphonic aftertouch and to the mass market, and it was an incredible instrument. This really takes it to another level. So it's an algorithmic synth with 8 oscillators. But before we get into how it generates its sounds and what you can do with them, let's have a look at the user interface, because that's what we're going to be working with. So on the left hand side we have the master volume control, and you'll notice straight away that we've got a lower and an upper region. So that tells us it's a bitimbral synth, so it works like the Hydrasynth Deluxe. You can have single voice mode or multi-voice mode, and multi-voice mode allows you to have two voices, two patches playing at the same time, either as layers or as splits, so you can have the choice. And then there's a balance control to allow you to make one louder than the other. You can play one on its own or both together. There's a glide function here. There's the transpose keys, the ribbon control key, and the chord program key, so you can stack notes up into a single note and play those across. Underneath those, we've got the pitch bend and the mod wheel, and then underneath that, which you probably can't see just here, is the headphone socket. There's a 3.5mm, 6.4mm, so 2 sockets and an independent volume control. Right, okay, so over to the top section of the synthesizer, which is the CV gate connectivity. So we can see it's all present and correct as it was on the Hydrasynth. 3.5mm jacks across the board there, so you can hook it up to your modular system or anything that uses CV gate. Underneath there, where we had just the arpeggiator on the Hydrasynth, we now have an arpeggiator and a sequencer, a 3-track polyphonic sequencer built in here, so we can create quite elaborate patterns within the synth itself. Use it as a sketch pad or a performance tool, whatever you want. The arpeggiator has a whole bunch of functions, but as well as the different modes and the octave ranges and the gating, we also now have an entropy control, which is basically probability. So by dialing that up, you'll get some kind of random note triggers, all within the range of the notes you're holding, nothing completely out of tune, but it will maybe throw a note in a couple of octaves higher or lower, or maybe not play some notes. So it's all just kind of probability stuff, but it's really cool, and it makes your arpeggiation quite unique. Also, these knobs here are touch sensitive, so you'll notice on the screen that as I touch each knob, the settings on the screen change, so I can see exactly what position those knobs are at, which I think is quite cool. Something I've seen in Arturia keyboards as well. So I really like that, so you don't have to have all the LEDs there. Moving across, we have the main systems area and the master control. These are almost identical to the Hydrasynth, so you should be very familiar with these if you've got one of those. MIDI settings, system settings, you can save, create an init patch or a random patch. There's a shift function for some of the shift functionality across the interface. There's a browse button that allows you to browse through the patches and presets as a list. There's a favorite section, so any patches that you favorited, you can instantly call them up by hitting that button there. Nice big rotary control with the RGB light ring around that, and then the increment buttons and the home stroke panic button at the bottom there. Don't need to go into huge amounts of detail. But of course, this is where things have really changed. So instead of having 8 individual OLED screens, we've now got a nice LCD touchscreen, which is nice and colourful, and it's very responsive, very clear and sharp. It's great at all angles and all lights. But the paradigm is exactly the same. So you've got 4 rotaries top and bottom, and they match up with the 4 sections at the top and the bottom of the screen. And instead of having buttons, we can now just tap those things to activate and deactivate them as we see fit. So nothing's really changed in the way you use it. It's just that a lot of it's now on screen. In between those 2 rows of buttons, you've got the larger part of the display, which in this case is showing the patch name. But if I play a patch for you now, you'll see that we have the option for an oscilloscope in there, which I think is quite useful. And then there's some smaller detail just over to the right-hand side of the screen. Should we need it, it shows us which algorithm we've got selected. It shows us, as you can see, if I play a chord, you'll see the peak level meter and a few other bits of information there. So again, if I was to have one singular complaint, and it's not a complaint, it's just a wish. I wish that was a little bit bigger. I like a larger screen, but that's good enough. It works, and I haven't got any problems with it. Over to the right hand side, we've got the exit button that will always bring you back to the home screen. You've got the voice settings button, so you can mess around with the voice limits, and you can see which notes are playing. And you've then got the page buttons, the macro assign button, and then the mod matrix button, which brings you into a 32 slot mod matrix that you can mess around with just there. Okay. Moving over to the right hand side, probably the most obvious difference that we see between this and the Hydra is the algorithm control. So it has its own digit display, has a rotary control and an algo edit button. So if I hit the algo edit button, I can go into, depending on where we are, I can go in and edit the algorithms. So let me just pick a patch here that's got a standard algorithm. So there we go. And in case you're not familiar with algorithmic synthesis, which is the method that the Yamaha DX synths used, it basically allows you to take multiple oscillators, in this case, and either use them as direct sound outputs or use them as modulation sources for other oscillators. So in the old DX7, for example, you had 6 what they call operators. Now, an operator was kind of like a miniature synth in its own right. Inside an operator was an oscillator, an envelope generator, and a VCA, essentially. And the oscillator was always a sine wave. Now, you could mess around with the frequency of that sine wave and the amplitude of it, and you could change the pitch of it, and you could modulate it with some envelope generators, but that was it. Now, what we have here with Leviasynth is 8 independent oscillators per voice, and that's 16 voices, so do the mathematics. 8 oscillators per voice, and they all have their own envelope generators, individual unique envelope generators. They also have 7 different modulation modes. We'll come onto that later on. But we can stack them just like we can with operators in an FM synth. We can stack these and have them affect each other. So for those who don't understand algorithmic synthesis, and I'm sure there's a few, what we see on the screen here is an algorithm. And this is a collection of oscillators arranged in a particular order to deliver a particular outcome. So we have 4 oscillators across the bottom here. Oscillators 1, 2, 3, and 4. They are underneath a horizontal line, and these are called carriers. These are the oscillators we actually hear when we play a note. So when I play this note, I'm hearing oscillators 1, 2, 3, and 4. Above oscillator 1, we have oscillator 5 and oscillator 6 above that. Now, these are known as modulators. So we don't actually hear the output of these, but the output of these is incredibly important because oscillator 5, its output is modulating oscillator 1. And when it does that, it delivers a more complex waveform. In this case, we've also got oscillator 6 modulating oscillator 5. So we're giving oscillator 5 a quite complex waveform, and then we're modulating oscillator 1 with that waveform to get an even more complex waveform. So these are different ways of getting different outcomes from these carriers. Now we can line these oscillators up in any fashion that we care to. The Leviasynth comes with around 144, I believe it is, preset algorithms built into the system. So we're currently on algorithm 45. That's algorithm 46, 47, 48, 49, and so on. And you can see that the relationships between the oscillators change. You'll see all these different lines happening. So one oscillator can modulate more than one other oscillator. Here we've got oscillator 6 modulating, oscillator 8 modulating oscillator 7 and 6. And in turn, 7 is modulating 5 and 4, and 4 and 5 are modulating 1 and 2, and 6 is modulating 3. So lots of possibilities and potential. You can also route the output of an oscillator back in on itself, and that's called feedback. So that generates yet more complex waveforms and modulations. So you've got over 300 waveforms in each of these oscillators that you can choose from to use. So you can go from a sine wave to a saw wave to a triangle wave into many, many complex static waveforms that are built into the synth. But of course, you can then modulate those with other waveforms and get just some wild and crazy outcomes, or some really very powerful ones. And of course, by using feedback, you can introduce even more complexity into that. Now, you might be wondering, how do I know which algorithm that I need to get the sound that I've got in my head? And so it does take a little bit of getting used to, but the best way to do it is to find a patch that's kind of close to what you want, and then start from there as a starting point. And soon you'll understand the relationship between each oscillator and how they affect each other. But of course, you know, the random button is a great way of just flicking through until you find something you really like, and you can start tweaking it. So there's over 144 different algorithms. As I scroll through here, you'll see we're now into the hundreds. And I'll say exactly how many there are. There you go, 144. I was right the first time. You can also create your own custom algorithm, and you can do that on a per patch basis. So, for example, I'm in this particular patch. If I wanted to use a custom algorithm, I just tap the custom algorithm button, and now I can go through and arrange my oscillators in the form that I want them to, and in with the links that I want to have, with the initial levels and envelope levels and modulation modes selected. So I can just dig in and create my very own set of my very own algorithm that I can use for this patch. You can copy that patch to an empty slot and use that algorithm again, but they are generally stuck with the patch that you create them with. But you can create as many of them as you like, but you can only store one per patch. Okay, now there is another cool thing that the algorithms can do, which I will show you a little bit later on, because it is super cool. But we'll move on from that just for now. And we're going to look at the oscillator section over here in the module select area. Again, should be familiar with this if you're a Hydrasynth user. So to kick off, we've got the oscillator section here itself. We've got an oscillator group edit section and an individual oscillator settings section. So each oscillator is laid out here in its color-coded form, and by pressing that button, I get the oscillator display on the screen, and I can then mess around with the various settings. I can page through all the different things, such as the envelopes and the waveforms and so on and so forth. I can adjust everything to do with that particular oscillator. Oh, getting my operators and oscillators mixed up all the time. So yeah, you can do that per individual oscillator. However, you might want to very quickly adjust a common set of features across all the oscillators. So for example, you might want to adjust the waveforms. So you just hit the wave button in the oscillator group edit, and on the screen you get all the waveforms for this particular patch. Now in this case they're all sine waves, so that's a kind of a traditional FM thing, but I can just start going through and picking the oscillator waveforms all on one page. Similarly, I can choose the feedback modes. I can mess around with the delay portion of the envelope, the individual envelopes of the oscillators, and the attack portions, the hold portions, the decay, and the sustain, and the release. I can mess around with the fine tuning or the overall pitch, feedback levels, and overall output levels. So that's a really quick way of just getting to the core major parts of the oscillator settings, and you can have all 8 on the screen and you can just tweak them as you need to. Or if you really want to dig in, you've got the individual oscillator buttons there. Over to the right of that, we see this kind of signal flow, and this was one of the great things I loved about the Hydrasynth, is that you saw the features in the way that they were being processed through the signal chain. And so at the top here, you've got the 5 common envelope generators. So these can be applied to anything. Same with the LFOs. You've got 5 common LFOs, all with different waveforms and methods. Then here you've got the digital filter, which we'll come to in just a moment. And then after that in the chain, you've got the analog filter, proper analog low-pass filter. You've then got the VCA. You've got pre-FX, which include lots of different things such as chorus, tremolo, flanger, rotary, phaser, lo-fi. There's compression and EQ as well, I think, and the distortion. So you can choose those in there. Then they're followed by the delay and the reverb. The pre-effects can actually be placed before or after the delay and the reverb, and the delay and reverb have multiple types to choose from as well. So you can choose whether the inserts go before or after. So yeah, it's very flexible. Above all of this, we've got 3 sets of 4 knobs. So the first batch is the oscillator envelope level and bias. Now, this takes the settings as a group of say, for example, the envelope level, and will just up them all in one go by a certain level. So if I start off here, you can see that my level bias is going up and everything's changing by that amount. Same with the attack and the decay and the release. So these are kind of quick controls to kind of help you just finish the shaping of your sound. You'll notice, again, these are touch sensitive, so I can see exactly what the settings are just by touching the relevant control. Okay. Now, we've got the digital filter and the analog filter. So the digital filter has many different filter models in there, some classic filter models. I think there's about 18 in total. It's similar to the one that's found in the Hydrasynth, but it has more in there. And then this final stage here is the analog filter, which is a true analog low-pass filter. It's capable of self-oscillation and also has a pre-drive saturation control as well, so you can just really beef that sound up. One of the things I often hear from people when we're talking about FM, because apparently I have this thing about FM synthesis, is they say, I'd like an FM synthesizer, but I wish it would have its own filter. Well, here you go. And this isn't the first, of course, FM synth to have its own analog filters, but genuine analog filter right there in the system. So there we go. That's the user interface. So let's have a look at some of these sounds. So I'm gonna call up my favorites list here, because there's some really cool stuff going on. So this is one of the first sounds that I chucked into my favorites list, because I have a big thing about Trevor Horn's productions, and I just love that kind of digital synclavier type sound with that ramp up pitch at the beginning in the attack. Brace Jones as well, common thread with Trevor Horn. Lovely sounds. This is another kind of typical FM type sound, because one of my favorite FM sounds is this thing called Strato DX, and it's kind of supposed to be a plucked Stratocaster string, a clean Stratocaster string on a guitar. Except this one's been layered up with some voices, some sort of vocal which is very nice. This one is called Synth Pop Split. So over on the left hand side, this is a multi-patch. A nice thick sort of, maybe a lately bass or solid bass type, classic kind of FM bass. And then over here on the right, nice kind of Juno-y analog string type sound. So, you know, great for doing, you know, bass parts and chord parts at the same time. And we start getting into some sort of ambient-y kind of rhythmic stuff. So we have this patch, and this is just the left-hand side of the patch, which I love the fact that you've got this kind of analog bass, and then that very digital bell sound that's just happening every 16th, which is very nice. And then over on the right-hand side, nice little clean. Next patch I've picked out here for consideration is this one called Screen Kiss. Now, if you're a Thomas Dolby fan like I am, you'll instantly know where this is or what this is inspired by. On the left-hand side, we have nice fretless bass with a little bit of tremolo with the aftertouch. And then over on the right-hand side, the sound designer, this Paul Schilling, managed to create this lovely recreation, although it's not exact, it's still very good, of another one of my favourite patches from the Fairlight, which is the Syrah vocal patch. It's not exact, but this isn't a digital synthesizer. No samples in here whatsoever. This is all lovely sound. Of course, you know, split across the keyboard. This one's nice. Mr. Hyde Seq. Seq spelled S-E-Q because it uses the sequencer. So just the sound in isolation itself is but how digital does that sound? Not very. This is lovely, it really is. And you can play on top of that. Next one I've got, this is a really cool one. And this is going to demonstrate this thing called algorithm morphing, which is a brilliant concept. And I'm not sure I've seen this on any other synthesizer before. So we've had waveform morphing for some while. You can easily, on most synthesizers now, have variable waveforms and morph between, you know, one waveform shape and another. How about being able to morph from one algorithm to another? This has it, and it's incredibly good because it adds yet another dimension of movement. And so how it works is very, very simple. Let's go into this patch here. So this is called UnAloneism, and if I go into the look at the algorithm screen, I see 3.0, not 30, but 3.0. This is telling me that it's currently starting off at the third algorithm of the ones that I've selected to use for morphing. So if I go into Algo Edit, what I see is the mode is set into morph mode, and then I've got these 8 different algorithms, and it's starting at number 3, and it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and then back 5, 6, 7, 8. Now I can morph through these algorithms using the manual control here, but in this case, I'll go to the mod matrix. You'll see in slot mod 1, I've got LFO4 affecting algorithm morph at a level of 63.8. So that's going to be using the LFO to modulate through those algorithms and just have a listen to what this actually sounds like. So this is going to start at algorithm 3 and it's going to go all the way through and back again. I'll just play 2 notes on this because I want you to hear the movement. Can you hear the tonal quality? None of that is aftertouch pressure. None of that is filter sweeping. That is the algorithms being moved or being, morphed through. So you're going from this algorithm to that one, and it morphs the settings, and so you get this incredible amount of tonal change deep within that patch. And again, it's automated in this case through LFO4. But if you want to do it manually, by all means do. I mean, I'll play the note, and you can see them moving, and you can really hear now that the tonal. Which is really cool, and I think that's amazing. So you've got 16 voices. Each voice has 8 oscillators. Each of those oscillators itself has over 300 waveforms. Each of those oscillators also has 7 different modulation modes. The modulation modes, if I haven't said already, they are, let me get this right, they are phase modulation, linear modulation, oscillator sync, phase distortion, 3 types of phase distortion, and pulse width modulation thrown in there. And that is then just blows your mind because it takes the waveforms and applies the modulation mode. So are you modulating using phase modulation or frequency? It's my head hurts just thinking about the possibilities of what you can do with this synth. It's incredible. It really is an incredible achievement. So, algorithm morphing. Who'd have thought? How cool is that? So, that's really kind of... see if I've got any more sounds that we can go through here. This is a lovely one. I love this FM bass sound, but of course I really like the patch. So I'm just going to play the sequence. Just speed it up a little bit. Anybody that's my age will recognise at least what that's trying to be. I just love that bass sound, that FM bass. It's classic FM bass sound. This is another one that's a classic FM bass sound. It can go from very punchy but soft to take your face off. I love that. And then over the top of that, you've got this really nice, gently arpeggiated, vocally formanty type thing that if I lean into, of course it's polyphonic aftertouch, that extends the release. One of the nice sounds, it's funny, this reminded me of a patch on my very lowly but still very much enjoyed Yamaha CS1X. There's a patch on there that sounds very much like this. So I'm just going to let that play out because I want to show you the filters. So let's have a look at the digital filter first. So be very precise, and there's obviously lots of different types of filter that we can have here. So let's choose something. This is a vowel filter. MS-20 type filter. How all of a sudden that just went mental. This might hurt. Bonkers stuff there. Let's just get that back to something similar. So that's the digital filter. There's loads of different models to choose from there. Then of course you've got the analog filter. Lovely stuff. So yeah, I mean, you could just get lost in all of that. It's amazing. Let's see what other patches we've got in our favourites. Oh, I do like this one. I'll just play a tiny bit of this. I absolutely adored this song when it came out and learned how to play it as soon as I heard, bought the album. That's all I'm playing because I don't want to get a copyright strike. But yeah, it's just a lovely patch, that from Paul Schilling again. His name creeps up quite often in my favourites list. This is a really nice one called Calm Sinesphere. Very ambienty type sound. Gorgeous stuff. Next one is called Traversing Path. This is a really nice one because it's, when you play the lower split, it's very deceiving. It kind of starts out acoustic and then kind of gets all harsh. It's very cinematic. Now, we couldn't talk about FM synthesizers without having some classic 80s FM sounds, and so this split is a nice one. So we're all very familiar with that. And then, of course, on the right-hand side, does anyone want to guess as to what's on this one? Good old electric piano. Love it. Still gives me goosebumps, that sound, and a lot of people hate it. I absolutely adore it. So I just had to throw that one in there just to tick the box on the bingo card. This is a nice one. It's called Beauty Strum. Actually, it's quite nice if you put the arpeggiator on this one. Like that one. This is a nice one called Forest Run. Again, this is very cinematic. Another nice lead sound, but very gritty, dirty. This is that kind of lo-fi stuff that's coming in, but that kind of classic marimba sound. Let's actually have a look at this one. So what we're using Cranium Cajon, which I guess is this, and then Seek Lead. And that's been really destroyed. Very nice, that is. And then one more, and this will be the last one I play for now anyway. This is called Surrounded By, and it really is. If you just listen in the background, it sounds like a little voice just every now and again. When I first played that, I genuinely thought somebody was trying to call me from the other side of the studio door. It's just there in the background. It's a lovely, lovely thing. Listen, that's all I've got time for, really, for you today. There's so much more, and what I think I might do is I might do a live stream in a few days' time once I've recovered from doing all of this, because this has taken a lot of time. So, yeah, this is the ASM Leviasynth. It's here, everyone. It was rumoured. There was that mysterious thing that appeared a year ago when somebody discovered that ASM had trademarked the name Leviasynth, and then Glenn, told maybe a little white porky pie to throw us off the scent. But here it is, and it's the follow-up to the Hydrasynth. And if anybody thought that ASM might have that kind of difficult second album syndrome with their next keyboard synthesizer, I think you can rest easy. They've done a fantastic job. It's chock full of loads of presets, both multis and singles. There's loads to sort of just get started with, but I thoroughly encourage you to get in and explore this if you get your hands on one of these. It's such a powerful and rewarding instrument. I naturally gravitate to these kinds of instruments. They give me a lot of joy. I really do like digital synthesis as a form, and this just ticks all of those boxes. But it also gives me those elements of analog synthesis that I really like. The warmth of that filter really does help the sound live and breathe, and it's just a very, very cool and expressive instrument, and that's the other thing that I look for. Some people have already mentioned, are they going to release this as a 49-key keyboard, as well as the Explorer versions that we've seen with the Hydrasynth? The answer at the moment, I think, is no. When I asked, because I did ask ASM about this, and they said they have no immediate plans to do this. Now, it doesn't mean to say they definitely won't do it, but it doesn't mean to say they definitely will. So at this moment in time, 61 keys or desktop version is all that you can get. I've mentioned the screen size. It's not detrimental. It's just a personal thing. I would have liked it to have been a bit bigger, but it's fine as it is, absolutely fine. It doesn't detract from the use of the synth whatsoever. In fact, it massively improves it. I would have liked some individual outputs on the back for the lower and the upper. That would have been nice, because then I can just throw those into different parts of the mixer and treat them individually if I wanted to. But again, not a massive deal for me. It was just, when I sat here kind of scratching my head thinking, yeah, that would be nice. But other than that, it's near on perfect, I would say. I've had so much fun with this, and you will too. So I thoroughly urge you to go and try and get your hands on one. If you're going to NAMM this week, please try and get onto the ASM stand and have a go. If not, we'll see you at Super Booth, and we'll be there as well. I might bring this to Synth Southwest. Tickets are still available. synthsouthwest.com. That's our very own ProSynth Network live event taking place in Dawlish on March the 21st. So maybe we'll bring this along. We might even bring it along to Synth East in Norwich next month. Who knows? But anyway, there it is. It's here, boys and girls. The ASM Leviasynth, ready to go. It's an amazing synthesizer. I can't express how grateful I am to ASM for the opportunity to have a look at this and play with this and bring this to you at this launch date. If you want to know how much it is, that's always important. So this keyboard version and these prices are not set in stone. They may differ depending on where you live in the world and depending on what sort of duties and taxes that you pay on importing, or the certainly what the distributors pay. But at the moment, the current price that I have here is for the keyboard version is €3,299, and for the desktop version €2,399. So not a cheap keyboard, but it is an incredible keyboard, and it's so powerful and so rewarding. Sounds amazing. That's it really for me. I hope you enjoyed this demonstration, and there'll be no doubt lots of others appearing between now and the next few weeks on this synthesizer as people get used to it and have a play with it. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you got something from it. Don't forget, we've got the live show as normal on the Fridays at 7 p.m. UK time, and so we'll be covering this Friday as well as anything else that appears at NAMM this week. And do give us a subscribe, click on that like button, ring the bell for notifications. Come and join us over at our Discord channel, prosynthnetwork.com/Discord. You can also help support our channel by going to prosynthnetwork.com/Patreon, or you can use the thanks button underneath this video. That would be fantastic. Every little penny helps. And of course, if you want to wear ProSynth Network merchandise, go to prosynthnetwork.com/merch, and you can buy t-shirts and hoodies and all sorts of lovely goodies. Oh, that rhymed. And you can do that there, and again, it helps support the channel. But once again, thank you to ASM, thank you to you for watching, and have a great rest of your week, and get one of these. They're amazing. Thanks everyone. See you soon. Bye bye.